Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Authors on the Air. I'm your host, James Latwell. And with us, we have Jeff Ayers. Jeff is half of the writing duo of under the pseudonym of A.J. Landau. It's Jeff Ayers and John Land. And we're going to talk today about the second book in the National Park series, and that's Coalburn. And I mean, if you like your thrillers and you like them outdoors, it doesn't get any better than this. Jeff, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And I'm a big fan of your stuff too. When's the next
Thanks,
one
Jeff.
coming, by the way?
God, it's been a busy year. So I've got one coming out next month in the National Park series. I'm focused in here, Jeff, in the
Okay,
Desert
sorry.
series, and then January in the Emily Hunter series. So yeah, it's been a busy kind of time. But didn't I see somewhere this week that Coalburn actually got some award recognition?
Yes, we won the international award, and this surprised me because my understanding was we put it in for both the action, thriller, adventure, and mystery suspense, and we won both.
Huh. That's outstanding.
So yeah, it's thrilling, and a publisher loves it. And it's nice to know that people actually are reading the book and enjoying it.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I really enjoyed the book, and we'll talk more about that. But tell us a little bit about Michael Walker and who he is and how he's become a character in this series.
And I love your doggy in the background there, by the way.
Yeah, sorry about that. He's excited about the book too. What can I say?
Oh, okay. Yes, great. So Michael Walker is an agent with the ISB, which is the Investigative Services Branch of the National Park Service. So think of it as their FBI. And because of that role, he can visit any of the over 430 national park sites around the world, literally. And he has jurisdiction. So once I realized that him in this type of role can actually visit these places without having to sort of stretch credulity and stuff like that, it was great. He also there was an incident at Mount Rainier, and he lost his wife and he lost his foot. So he has a prosthetic foot. And so it's challenging for him, especially doing outdoor stuff and physical things sometimes. But because of his role, he has to do these things. And the thought was that he has to live with his grief every day.
Yeah, and I think that theme kind of weaves through Coalburn, and he is dealing with that grief and that loss, and the way that you've done that was really kind of poignant in some instances. So there's some memories that kind of spring back on him and that kind of thing. And I thought it was really a nice plot thread through the story.
Oh, well, thank you. I will say that currently working on book 3, and he's going to have to go back to Mount Rainier, and it's going to be a lot harder for him than he realizes.
Oh, that's going to be great to see. You're great to read. Not good for him, but great for us to read.
Yeah. Now, role of a thriller writer, you have to put your characters that you love through horrible things.
Yes, this is true. Now, in Coalburn, though, can you tell folks a little bit about the story that's behind this new book?
So this one is set in 2 different national parks. It's set in Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska, where climate change essentially is thawing out the ice, and a virus that has not been seen for a very long time comes to life. And on the opposite side is the Everglades, where Gina Delgado, who is an FBI agent, she's trying to solve a murder. And how those are connected, well, the book will tell you. But we also wanted to have them the parks be as polar opposite as they possibly could.
And they are. I mean, you get that visceral sense of of the frozen Glacier Bay, and then sweltering heat down in the Everglades, and the like you said, they're just total opposites of one another, but they do have a tie, and the book does lay that out. Now, this is the National Parks Thriller series. How did you come to use the national parks as a setting? Because it's really kind of unique. When you look at the spectrum of thrillers out there.
I've been a national park kid. I've been visiting them since I can't even remember. Yellowstone was my first, and my family every summer would go to Yellowstone National Park. And yeah, I just fell in love with them and realized there was more, and so started visiting them with my family. And I've always wanted to read a thriller set in the national parks, but more than one. Um, and there's some great authors like Nevada Barr and Scott Graham who do mysteries set in one park. So one story, one park. And I always thought, well, you got to do more than that. And I always have had this idea brewing through my head. And Michael Walker actually came to me in a dream for 2 nights in a row. You know how characters talk to you since you write. I can honestly say that he told me his life story over 2 nights. It was wild, and I still can't explain it. And I wrote a full draft of Leave No Trace, and it was terrible. It was terrible. Everybody I gave it to said, I'm bored. When does it get interesting? And you never want to, as a thriller writer, say, well, get to page 50, then it kicks in. No, no. And I gave it to John Land for advice, and he said to me, you need to blow up the Statue of Liberty on page 1.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no Statue of Liberty in the book. And he says, well, there should be. And next thing I know, he and I are working on it together, and we came up with Leave No Trace and Cold Burn.
Yeah, I mean that opening scene in Leave No Trace. I mean, it does set the tone and the mood, and you see that explosion right on basically the first page, and you're off and running. And Cold Burn is very much along the same line. I mean, it's very action adventure, thriller. Everything that readers go to for a thriller, that plot, pacing, and all that kind of stuff is really tied into Cold Burn. So folks will be happy to get that.
I compared it to Die Hard because it's Die Hard in the national parks essentially. But the other thing I wanted to do in these books was, since I love the national parks so much, we worked with the National Park Conservation Association. We worked with people who actually work in the individual parks to get the details as right as possible. And since I also love learning when I read, the greatest thrillers are ones you learn something about at the same time. I thought it'd be really cool, and John agreed. Thank goodness. It seems to be our favorite thing we get feedback from. Every chapter opens with a little factoid about where the chapter is set.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting. A little touch there, kind of just a little palate cleanser before you jump into the next scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Now the Cold Burn, as we talked about, features Glacier Bay and the Everglades. And I know you travel a lot, and you've been to many of the parks. Have you been to both of those national parks?
Oh, yes. In fact, once we realized that we were going to do Cold Burn, we wanted to do the Everglades. I had been to the Everglades just recently and interviewed one of the gentlemen who runs an airboat company. So it's kind of fun getting a little details behind the scenes on that. But I hadn't been to Glacier Bay at that point. So I did research and discovered that it was cheaper for my wife and I to take a week cruise up to there than it was for me to fly solo for a weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, so
You got to do it. Yeah,
exactly.
The sacrifices that you have to make for the art. I understand.
Yeah, and the cruise ship actually went into the park. Then they brought rangers on board, so I had a wonderful conversation with all the rangers there, and it was wonderful.
That's great.
And the park is beautiful, and the problem with what's going on with climate change and stuff is the glaciers are melting, and I can imagine 30 years ago how stunning it would be. It's still stunning, but it's changing every day.
Yeah, I can imagine it is. Now, Cold Burn has many layers that are kind of tucked into it. You've got the high-tech crime layer that's going on. You've got the search for this mysterious element. We won't go any further than that. And then you've got the indigenous culture that you bring in that features prominently in the book. Which one of those was probably the toughest for you to tackle?
I would say the indigenous folks who live there And I say that because we wanted to get those details as right as possible. And so we had to rely on other books and talking with people who've worked with them. When I wanted to actually talk to them directly, I reached out to 40 or 50 different organizations, and not a single one wanted to talk to me, which was
Wow.
frustrating. But I also can understand. Here's
Sure.
somebody who's not from the region asking, you know, questions about your culture and society and things like that. So um, we tried to be as accurate as possible. And there's an author's note actually at the end of the book that tells you what we did and the
Mhm.
steps we took to make sure we were as correct as possible. And from the folks who've worked with them, they told us that we got it pretty much right.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that piece of that thread that goes through the book that dealt with that population. They're isolated, their culture is different. There's a trust, issue about, people from the outside, coming there to do things that are supposedly good for the native culture, but just are predatory. But I think you handled it really well. It was informative, and you got the sense of there's some desperation from the people that live there on a day
Mhm.
to day basis.
Yeah, I know when the park first was established in 1980, there was a lot of animosity, and rangers who were going up there were talking about worrying about being shot or beaten or things like that because there was just so much tension. And slowly over time, that has been decreasing. Thank goodness.
Mm, yeah, I bet. Now,
Yeah.
this Colburn's the second. You're knee deep into the third one coming up. Which
Mhm.
has been your favorite character to write?
Oh, well, that's a great question. One of the things that I love Michael Walker so much because, like I said,
Hmm.
he talked to me and I know about his life, and I'm learning more about him as I write. And being a co-author, which is working with someone else, two heads are better than one. I'll just say because there's things that I think, oh, this would be perfect, and my co-author will say, no, no, this would be perfect, and we'll come up with this absolute like great third idea that like where did this come from? And I think that's because the characters are talking to us. And Michael is definitely my favorite character to write. But I will admit, and don't tell John Land I said this, but I've been a fan of his books since the late 80s.
Sure.
So there's cameos of a couple of his characters in Cold Burn. And that was just an absolute thrill for me to have him bring back a couple characters that I absolutely adored.
Nice. That was a nice touch. Yeah, and speaking of co-authoring, I mean that can be a difficult challenge. I mean, how you talk a little bit about it, but how do you and John as a co-authoring team make this book sound like a single voice? Because you and I have both read, co-authored work where you can tell who wrote which chapter.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
this is kind of seamless, and it doesn't have that breakup, kind of feeling to it. How did you accomplish that?
One of the things that John and I discussed when we agreed to work together was he sort of has the controlling aspect of, okay, let's talk about pages, and then he will write a draft super fast, and
Hmm.
there'll be a lot of blanks in them. So I'll give you an example of a chapter. Let's say it's set at Zion. There'll be put fact here. Then there'll be like a little bit of outline, then big holes like fill in information about Zion here, fill in information about Michael here, etc.
Hmm.
And he would send me the first 50 pages or so within like a day after we'd already talked about it. So I mean that's how fast.
Wow.
And then it
Wow.
would be me adding the stuff in and editing, and then he would edit. And by the time we did this really strange process, the voice was pretty seamless.
Hmm. Yeah, whatever it is whatever magic you've uncovered there, really worked because it's really just a single voice that you hear through the book. So that's hard to accomplish with a co-author.
Yeah, and for the new book, I'm discovering that myself because I'm ending up writing more of the chapters than I'm used to doing. So I'm letting my co-author do more of the editing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, trying to maintain that one voice. Um, we've actually had reviews say that it's amazing that three people could write this book because they think AJ Landau is a third person.
Is another person. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love it. Yeah, and he's really talented. This AJ guy.
yeah. And then John will joke that he's a hack, so AJ does all the work.
I love it. That's great. Now you mentioned another co-author coming on board. Can you talk about that? I mean, I know who this
Absolutely.
is,
Hmm.
and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. But yeah, can you tell folks a little bit about what's to come?
Yeah. So a quick background on this. We were told that there was going to be another book deal after Coldburn came out, which is like, hey, this is great. And last summer, I drove around the country, visited 34 national park sites and Graceland
Yeah,
because I had
Graceland.
to. But yeah, the idea was visiting parks that we write about for the future books. And I got back from my trip and discovered that John Land could not write them with me anymore because of a project that he had just signed up for, essentially.
Right.
So I will admit that it was devastating to me because like, oh no, I love writing with you, and I'm still actually working with him on other stuff, so it's kind of cool. He's ghostwriting now, so I'm actually editing those, which is neat and
Nice.
fun.
Very nice.
But yeah, so my agent and editor came to me and said we want to have this still be a co-author project, and who would you like to write with? And I immediately thought of John Lindstrom, who
Right.
I adored his book.
Mhm.
And I think he does a really great job, especially with characters that are more well-rounded than you see in other thrillers. Um, Especially the good and bad. They're more create these really great realistic um, people. And I thought he'd be fun to write with.
Mhm.
So I approached him at BoucherCon in Nashville, and he said yes. And so took a lot longer than you can imagine because he also is an actor. So there had to be specific things mentioned in the contract and all that stuff. So what I thought was going to be like a quick ended up being a 6 month waiting. But it's all signed and all good, and we're actually working on it now and having a blast. And I say that with a pun because the new book is called Blast Radius, and it's about volcanoes.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, yeah, John's a great guy. He's a wonderful author, and I think the pairing between the two of you will be really fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to Blast Radius when it hits.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when we were talking about parks I've visited,
Mhm.
I've never been to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and we were trying to write the book without that particular park because I hadn't been there. And everybody said, "Oh, you're working on volcanoes. What about Hawaii?" I'm like, okay, finally. So finally, last month actually, I spent 4 days on the Big Island and visited the park, and it was erupting at the time, so it was really neat. And also, um, I'm not fond of flying all that much, and I actually took a helicopter tour over the park, which will
Yeah,
be used in the book.
there you go. Again, the things you sacrifice for your art, Jeff. My hat's off to you.
Yeah, people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, you're going there just for research." No, that's what I did, honestly.
Honest, there was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, we're going to end up with something we call three quick hits, and it's three
Okay.
questions, and just put yourself in Michael Walker's headspace and just answer them as he would.
Okay.
Uh, what's Michael's favorite drink? What's his cocktail of choice?
Michael actually doesn't drink, but he can down a Diet Coke quick.
Yep, there you go. How about his favorite music? What does he listen to?
He likes light jazz, and he also kind of likes yacht rock a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. And then finally, what's Michael's greatest fear?
Oh, that's a good one. I think Michael's greatest fear is that he's not going to be able to accomplish the job that he is tasked to do.
Yeah, that completely fits. Folks, we've been talking with Jeff Ayers, half of the co-writing team of AJ Landau with John Land. And Jeff, it's been a blast to talk to you again.
Oh, it's been a pleasure for me. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, congrats on the recent awards for Colburn, and folks, you're going to want to go out and get this, especially, you know, if it's hot this summer. You got Glacier Bay in the book, so it, you know, it kind of all works. So go out and grab
Yeah,
it.
and you don't have to read them in order or anything. So yeah,
There you go. All right, Jeff, you take care. It's great to see you.
great seeing you. Thanks so much.
Take care.